Good morning, good afternoon, good evening and good night from the United Kingdom. I am Pamela R Haynes, host of the Author to Author podcast. How do you like my new jingle? It was created especially for my podcast by RN Subliminal Music, who also happens to be my brother-in-law Ray. Check out his music now on Spotify. The lovely people at Dalgety Herbal Teas sent me a full complement of their delicious teas, and I have been able to share the love with the award winners and guests at the Powerhouse Global Women's Awards ceremony last weekend, and also with the lovely Aurea Rees from season 1 of the podcast, who did an amazing TED Talk in Wolverhampton, which blew everybody away. This month is Black History Month in the UK. If you are in London next Friday, the 14th of October 2022, I will be delivering a talk about my book journey at Redbridge Central Library at 7 p.m. It would be wonderful to see you. This week I have been interviewing self-published authors for this season, and I cannot wait for you to hear their interviews. For today's episode, I interviewed a multi-talented, multi-award-winning poet, actor, singer and author Jannette Barrett. Let's dive into her interview now. See you on the other side. Hello there, Jannette. How are you?
I'm very well. Pamela Hayes herself. Oh, I'm so pleased to be here with you to be interviewed. Honestly, I really am. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me on the Author to Author podcast this evening. I have got loads of questions to ask you, so let's jump into it. Jannette, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Jannette Barrett?
Jannette Barrett is a multifaceted woman of many genres. First and foremost, I'm a retired psychiatric nurse who chose to go out into her own community and meet the needs of her type of people with their mental health issues, due to the fact of suffering mental health for many years myself, and it not being met in the hospitals in the way our culture needs it to be met. So that was first and foremost. So I left the hospital in 2004 and started JanCanCare. The name JanCan was given to me by my peers, who initially said, if anyone can, Jan can. Like I said, I was multifaceted and would explore any genre within the work field, try to excel in it to make my own personal experience of caring and nursing be the best it possibly could be. Secondly, I'm a mother, a wife, and grandmother. I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren. And I am blessed with being with my husband for 31 years. And our marriage is very strong and very successful, I'm pleased to say. Every praise to the God above us all. I love to write. I love to run. I love to sing. I love to be creative. I'm explorative. I'm eccentric. Many, many, many things, Pamela. So that's a little bit.
Well, this is it. This is what I'm hoping that my listeners will be able to catch an essence of you today. And I think I captured the majority of things. You're about the author in your 3rd book really does capture it all. So I call you Jannette Barrett, but I know that you have several personas. If that's Jannette Barrett, then who is Ms Lyricist B?
Yearsis B is the persona that arises in me when I get overwhelmed with words and things inside my head as a dyslexic person. And Yearsis B comes out of me with riddles, with rhymes, with different types of language speeches, and it just jumps and pops out from anywhere and can be extremely comical at the same time. And I capture it many, many times and bring her to the surface when I need to be on stage.
Then who is Jannette Machete then?
Oh my goodness. Machete is a force to be reckoned with. And Machete is very, very helpful when I'm an advocate fighting someone else's cause in safeguarding or the mental health or anything like that. Jannette and Yearsis B would shy away from those types of things. It's like many of us have different work hats. And even within one job, we can show different personas within the one job when it needs be. When me, myself, and I've given names to my different personas so that they own the field of me. And once they are present, they stay present until Jannette Barrett takes them down.
So, taking it all the way back from the beginning, who came first? And, you know, because you've done acting, you've been a singer, you've published author, narrator, you name it, you've done it. But how did it all start?
Well, from the age of 2, I think Machete was always there. Because as a 2-year-old, I had to look after my autistic sibling, who was 11 months younger than me. So Jannette Joseph at the time, or I was named, needed to be more masterful and take command of the situation that she was in. And like a child would have an imaginary friend, I had to create this persona within me that was stronger, could take anything that was coming, especially the tantrums from my own sister at the time, which were difficult. Anybody who's got an autistic child, which is a very broad spectrum, but one that can be tunnel vision and have tantrums and is not very social, would understand that you need to take command of the situation. So that's when Machete, I think, was born.
And in terms of your acting and singing and so on, when did that start then?
Well, I went to a dance school called Sheila Maria's, and I was quite a young person, from 6, 7 years old. And I went with my older sibling. And I think from an early age, because I was used to having a different persona, to be seen within the household, because there were 7 of us and 6 of us are girls, and I'm second to last. The gap between myself and my last sibling and the others was 16 months. So they were all in school and I was left with my younger sibling. And they came back from school with stories and games, and there was show-off and things. And I just wanted to join the big gang and not just be left with the one sister who didn't do much. So I started to exaggerate. So my persona became very eccentric. And so once I got into drama and dance school, it was shown, it was seen immediately. But I was very small, Pamela. I'm still small for you know, how I look and everything. Size 3.5 feet, you know, which is quite small. I was put in the 5 and unders group, even though I was like 7. And I absolutely hated it. Because we didn't get to do the things I knew I could do. So I played up even more so that I could get into the big group. So I think that's where my stage presence of exaggeration really started.
And it's something that you still carry on doing today, because, you know, I've certainly seen a few of your productions being advertised on Facebook. So tell us the kind of acting roles that you've had and directed.
I've been in short films, one of them called The Domino Effect and another one called Nurse Brown on StreamYard Theatre. And I've done lots of theatre work as just walk-ons. I've been a donkey in The Taming of the Shrew. I've been lots of different, and because of my size, I've been lots of animals. Nobody knew it was me, but I played lots of different parts. I even played a part when Dame Judi Dench wasn't Dame Judi Dench back in London when she was doing theatre. So I've been in the game a long time, but when children come along, you take a back step and you play the mother and wife role according to their needs. But once that was gone, I came back into it full force when all of the children left home and was completely established. So my latest things have been a lot of my own writings, my own plays based on my books or other people's references of my books and interpretations of them. So that's been good.
And is there anything in the pipeline at the moment, acting-wise?
In the pipeline, what's running now at the moment is something based on the musical biography of Robert Nesta Marley, Bob Marley himself. And it's called The King of Reggae, The Man, The Music. We currently are running throughout the country now. The next date will be in Southampton, which is the 8th of September. But in my own hometown of Birmingham in the West Midlands, we'll be running it at the Birmingham Rep between the 20th and the 24th of September, which I'm very proud of, to be doing it in my own hometown. And I was sought after. I didn't go for it. I didn't look for it. I was requested to send in a script based on my own findings of Marley, and it was accepted. And then it was customized to the music that they wanted to play and the scenes that they wanted to bring across to the audience. So that was great to actually be acknowledged for different writings that I've done as a ghostwriter, poems and things for people for weddings and different type of occasions under pseudonym. And one such person came to me and says, yeah, would you like to do this? And I said, me, with my doubting Thomas. Me? Well, why me? What have you seen of mine? Oh, well, you wouldn't know, but I was an audience when you did one of your plays called Joseph vs. Barrett. And I liked the interpretation you had with music and things like that. And I was told you made them all up yourself. So if you've got an interpretation like that, I would like you to use that within what we want to bring. So, yeah.
It's established then that acting has been in your background. You've been in a number of productions and so on. Where does your music taste come from? Who's responsible for that?
My late mother and my father, because they passed away over 36 years ago, my father was a great baritone singer. He loved calypso and jazz, bluesy type of singing. He would sing all the time under his breath, especially when he was making Saturday soup. He would always be singing, but there was always this really deep, warm humming that he did that was very musical, very rhythmical. And mother sang all the time anyway. And whether she was angry or happy, the singing would come. And I think it's a Caribbean thing all in all, that the singing is there. It changes temperament. It helps mood. It's healing. So with all those things, it was always around in the house. The music in the front room with the blue spot gram was always continuing and dancing and everything, which is customary to many Black households back in the 60s when I was born and brought up.
Lovely. I can actually imagine your dad, because obviously I've read your first book and I do remember him being in the kitchen and being responsible for doing a lot of the cooking, including Saturday's soup, as you said. So I could actually imagine, I could see him doing that, and that's where your singing stems from. But you took it one step further. You also are a songwriter, is that right?
Yeah. Yes. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I think it's something to do with the fact that my dyslexia likes to overexpress. I mean, people, if anybody's listening to the podcast afterwards, we say, oh my goodness, Jannette's texts on Facebook, they're long, and I'm trying to explain myself. So I think I used to listen to different songs and then make up my own words to them. So when people wanted a song for a wedding or something that they know the song, but they wanted to sing it themselves over the mic, something of vows to their wife or to their new husband, and change the song around, I was asked to write lyrics to a song so that they could sing it. So I got into that. And I think one of my first poems that was read out for a wedding was to a close friend called Vivian Johnson. And that was in 1994 when she got married. And she remembers it to this day. And she's actually part of my theatre ensemble cast. And she's been in a couple of the shows. So to this day, we've kept that friendship going. And she remembers that first rendition of a poetry song that I did for her at her wedding.
So, Jannette, do you have experience of being in the recording studio? Do you have albums out there and CDs and so on?
Oh, nothing like that. No, I have got a few recordings, which are just instrumental things that I use, and I change the wording to suit different plays that I do. But the background of the songs that I've got the copyright for. They've been done for me with someone called David Copeland, who is a gospel singer-songwriter. And he's helped me do a few musical instrumental covers, which I have to retain for myself. But I haven't put myself out there to do that because it's not a genre that I want to totally follow and just keep. I'm a bed of flowers. You know, I'm not just a one-trick pony, and I'm still growing. I'm still learning different things. I'm still excited about what I've still got inside of me, and I'm still growing every single one of those seeds, and none of them have come to full blossom as yet. And I'm excited to still be the tallest sunflower in the flower bed.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love the idea that you're not just one singular flower, you're a bed of flowers. You know, you're spreading your knowledge and expertise and love and music throughout the whole thing. But if you had to pick a genre of music that you like listening to or you like singing, what would that be?
Oh, it would be jazz and blues, because it settles in the soul. It's got a rhythm to it that is almost like the heartbeat. And I think it goes way back to our ancestors with the blues type of thing. So it can be something of sorrow, it could be mourning, but it could also be something that is joyful as well. And I think the underlying beat of blues can be accompanied for any occasion. It's not something that I want people to be up and dancing to and everything, my kind of singing, because then it takes away the silence and stillness of what you want to bring across. But blues makes people sit and listen. And that's what I think people need to do more of, is open up their brain waves and listen to what someone has to deliver. That's powerful.
Oh, it most certainly is. And I know that you're going to bless us with one of your poetry recital a bit later on in this interview, and I'm really looking forward to that. So we've covered your singing and your songwriting and your acting. I think that brings me to ask about your faith, because I know that your faith is important to you. Yeah. When did that start? And how important is that to you now?
I think before I knew faith was faith, I called upon help all the time. As I've said, from the age of 2, I was responsible a lot of the time for an autistic sister. And what does a 2-year-old do with themselves, never mind being responsible for someone 11 months younger than them with learning disabilities or difficulties? You call on help. And if there's no help around, you're still saying, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? You're still talking to yourself. So I was always calling for that. And somehow, no matter through all the difficulties, I always got it, even if it was from my own self. Because listeners, how is a 2-year-old going to be responsible, or how would a 2-year-old contain the mannerisms of a 1-year-old with autism? You can't even fathom it. You can't even fathom it, but I did. So where on earth did that source of strength and inspiration come from? I can only say that it came from above. I can only say that, because it certainly couldn't have been from the 2-year-old me. I had no idea how to control my sister. I was helped. That's where my faith stems from. And I've been through so much turmoil, and pain and disorientation and confusion and loneliness and all those things. And every time I asked for help, it came from sources I would never have thought of. And I found the strength in myself to break through. My faith is powerful.
I think you're one of the first people who I watched do a praise dance. I've got mixed feelings about it, but maybe you can explain to our listeners what is a praise dance or a worship dancer?
It's not even so much the dance. I think a lot of worship or praise dance comes through mime, because there shouldn't be any words. It's an expression of feeling, and it's to the viewer's interpretation of what they take from it. And faith is a blind thing. It's a presence. And when you do something through mime, you want it to be silence. You want it just to be felt. You want the person to see your faith through the movement that you're doing. It's the same as when people take spirit, and some people say, some jerk about and fall on the floor, some speak tongues, some do this. But some people are silent and still. But it doesn't matter how it's shown, if that's the interpretation that the person takes it, and it's their emotive and their feeling of expression that comes outward, we should never judge it, mock it, or try to evaluate it, because it's a personal thing of the connection that person is feeling from the spirit above.
Yeah, I mean, I'm minded of King David in the Old Testament, who danced in the presence of the Lord, and watching you do it. And I think one other person that I was present when it took place. It's very graceful, very elegant, and I could imagine that if you were to perform it again, it's not going to be the same the second time around or the third time around. Am I right? It's how you express yourself at that time.
It is. And I think a lot of the times it's the build up to it, the environment of it, how you're feeling the injection of spirit at the time. All of that plays a major part in how you express the sameness of the feeling of it. It's like, okay, you haven't got an emotion of the love you feel when you hold your child for the first time. But every mother has that same emotive to look at every facet of their child, every eyelash, every pore, the smelling and everything, because you are overwhelmed by it. But some could hug and squeeze, some could kiss and every sinew of the child, and others could just look at the eyes or listen to the breathing. It's that same overwhelming of emotion that you feel, but it's different, yet the same between mother and mother.
Oh, Jannette, you have put that so well. So thank you for that explanation. I really like that analogy of being overwhelmed when you see your child for the first time, but that love doesn't disappear. You find other aspects of that child's character, that you like, whether it's physical or, or mental or spiritual. It's a beautiful explanation. So thank you very much for that. Jannette, thank you for donating 2 copies of your last book, which is called Cries from Their Cells, When Walking on Forgiveness Road, Transition Series Book 3. So I've read your first book, which is called Triumphant Through My Early Years. Did I get that right? And your second book, which is here on the shelf, which is called They Never Saw Me. Mm-hmm. Let's stick with the first book in this series. Can you tell our listeners what that book is about?
Yeah, They Never Saw Me, Triumphant Through My Early Years, full title. When you are 6 in line and you have 5 siblings with our girls, any woman working in a field where there's a lot of women, grown adult women, know that there are complications. So strip that back to a family of 6 girls who are year apart, sharing bedding, sharing clothes, sharing this, sharing that. There will be sibling rivalry. We are not the Waltons. We were never the Waltons. Okay, there was no Goodnight John Boy or Mary Ellen with us. It was fight for yourself for space, fight for yourself for the hand-me-downs, etc., etc. So, Triumphant Through My Early Years, and the head title, They Never Saw Me, I used that because I wanted other siblings to know at that time, when you're growing up in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of large families then. There wasn't many families that were under 5 children or something like that. It was very popular to have 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 children. So we're not uncommon. But what I wanted to get across was how I felt in the area that I was, with that gap between myself and the other siblings and being left with my sister. Because my needs weren't met. That was my belief. My needs weren't met because all I was asked over and over was, look after so-and-so, do this for so-and-so, mind so-and-so, have you done this for so-and-so, why haven't you this for so-and-so, you've got to do better for so-and-so. And it was, excuse me, hello, what about me kind of thing all the time, when I seen others being nurtured and being given things. And I was thinking, is there something wrong with me? Can they not see me? And as I wrote different things of stages of the years through that book, which is up to age about 11, I used the title Triumphant through those early years, because at every stage of my early years in life, I had to triumph through some kind of ordeal. So the title is fitting.
I mean, it was quite shocking. It's a shocking read. It's not an easy read.
No.
Some of the examples that you bring up there are quite horrific. But I still remain surprised that both you and your younger sister went to the same school. Mm-hmm. And whenever they had difficulties with her, they would call you, another child, to manage a child. I mean, I suppose back then there was still not much knowledge about children with autism and so on. But still, that was quite shocking to expect you to parent your younger sister.
That's right. It was shocking, but to me, it wasn't unusual because I was doing it anyway. However, I thought school would be my sanctuary. I thought, oh, I'm going to school. I'm going to see other children. I'm going to play. I'm actually going to play and I'm going to learn. I was so thirsty to learn new things and I was so excited. But then when I realized that my sister was going to be in the same year as me all the way through, oh, Pamela, my heart sank through the soles of my feet and was buried in trenches because I just thought, I'm never going to escape, never going to escape. There was no sanctuary at school. There was no sanctuary at home. The only sanctuary I had was a treehouse, which I absolutely loved to escape to. But even then, half of the time I had to take her with me. I had nowhere to go. I literally had nowhere to go at all, apart from me create things in my own head. It was hard.
Well, that brings me on to then the second book, which I got wrong. I actually said Triumphant Through My Early Years. And then I said, They Never Saw Me. But yeah, that's the whole title, the complete title of the first book. The second book was I Don't Know Who I Am. Tell us about that book.
That book was the most disturbing to write, to be fair. It's really difficult as a preteen and teenager anyway, leading what people will call a stable, normal life in a normal environment, with ordinary peer pressure from school, etc., etc. But if you strip back all of those and have the unusual or what you feel was unusual, throw that in the mix, then it was a very, very difficult book to write indeed, to revisit, to regurgitate. I Don't Know Who I Am came for the fact that I always had to be somebody besides myself in order to cope with my sister, in order to cope with the bullying that I took on her behalf at school, in order to cope with abuse that I got from home, from my parents in the form of discipline and sexual abuse, I'm afraid, and listeners, from an uncle who happened to be over 6 foot tall, who lived with us in our first home. So that you have to become someone else when you're abused in order to sustain the severity of it and the memory of it and the stench of it and everything else that comes with abuse. But when you are purposely allowing yourself to be abused to protect your sibling, that's a different kind of persona that you have to take on. That's a different kind of bravery. So They Never Saw Me comes from the fact that happened. And then I go into I Don't Know Who I Am with that book was because I really didn't know who I was. Who was Jannette Joseph at the time? I got completely lost because I was the gladiator, the soldier, the soul bearer, the person that just got on with it, the person that took it, the person that put up with it. And I so much wanted to find out who I was, but didn't have the room to allow myself to find out who I was or to allow myself to be vulnerable. I had to sustain the gladiator character for so long because within that book as well, I go from the the knowledge of the male figures in my life being abusive to falling into a relationship with an abusive partner, but that's where the domestic, financial and verbal violence and abuse comes into play, because I had no comparison. So that story goes into it. And within that book, I had to try to find out who the hell I was.
So, Jannette, tell us, what can we expect then from the latest book in the series, Cries from Their Cells?
When walking on forgiveness road, I am so proud of being able to write that book. And it's the smallest, but it's the most profound, because forgiveness has got to be the hardest journey for anyone, for yourself or to forgive somebody else. But it's a necessity to sustain your own well-being and to move forward in your life. After finding out who I was and what I could be, Pamela, was when I was able to write that. And the way I was able to write that came into force due to my singing, because the first two books I was able to make parts of it into plays. So some people say they write for their own catharsis, it's very therapeutic to them and they don't want any money from it. They just want to do it to release themselves. And I truly meant that, and I truly still stand by it, because out of anybody that's been under Marcia M Publishing House or any publishing house, I'm probably the least one that publicizes my books and pushes it forward. And part of it is because I don't need to. Part of it is because I don't feel like it. But the most thing is because I got what I want out of it. And I've taken a curveball by using parts of the book and turning them into play. So not only was I healed and nurtured and physically helped by writing it, in order to direct other people to become the perpetrators and the helpers in the story of your life takes strength and zeal. And for me to really revisit, not just by writing it, but by becoming the person I was at the time, to create a play and a story for other people to see, to cry it, to feel it, to manifest it on stage, takes extreme control and power to be there. Once I was able to write those plays and knew I could direct, and one of them was executed, I knew I could write Cries from Their Cells and really go on that forgiveness road. Really go there and not just say the words, oh yes, I forgive the person, because I've said that numerous amount of times, but I knew I wasn't really there because I was still triggered. Things could happen. Now I'm not triggered. If I can go and write the plays and stuff and get other people to do it, I'm not easily triggered now. So I could definitely walk on that forgiveness road and let it leave me.
Who is forgiveness for, Jannette?
Forgiveness primarily started with me. It had to come from me first in order for me to be fully armored to forgive all the others, including my siblings, because I blame them being older for not protecting me. I blame them for not seeing me in parts. I blame them for leaving me to have the responsibility of their sister too. I blame my parents. They went far too soon in life for me to get answers. And then it went on to the perpetrators who really soiled my life. But I needed to be fully armored in order to strip down myself to bear. I put a phrase in one of my books called, I was walking like a skeleton in fraudulent flesh. And that's a powerful, powerful, powerful sentence. Walking like a skeleton in fraudulent flesh. I felt like nothing. I felt like a fake, a fraud. I felt like an imposter. I mean, we hear of imposter syndrome, don't we? But I mean, I went much deeper than that, much deeper. The loathing of myself, was extreme, really extreme. So I had to forgive that loathing of myself for allowing certain things to happen to me. Once I got over that, I was able to say, okay, if I can make amends with me, I can start to make amends with others, because no one's born that way. My environment, I didn't choose it. I don't know what their environment was to choose. My environment was the same as my siblings were. They got beatings too, and they handle things their way, and I handle things my way. There's always one person in the family that can handle the nursing type of thing, usually, or the one who's left looking after the elderly parents and things like that. So as I got on in years, I started to see patterns of this. Well, there's always one, there's always one, there's always one. And the other siblings, oh, well, I can't handle it. And it is a mind thing, what you can handle emotionally and what you can see and take in emotionally, whether you can continue with your life. So I had to come to grips with all of that. And it was a difficult journey. That's why I said, when walking on forgiveness road, cries from their cell. The cell, a physical cell, as in prison cell, the cell of the membrane, the core self, your anatomy cell as well, I thought of, so that's where that title comes from. But yeah, the forgiveness started with me before I could start with other people. And that's what my poem is on today as well, Pamela. So
okay, yeah. We're going to get there in a minute. I just want to feed back on what you're saying, really, that in order to arm yourself, to put on an armor, you had to strip yourself down. That's really deep, Jannette, and it's evidence that you knew what you had to do in terms of doing the work. We can all say you forgive so and so, but actually doing the work of forgiveness is a different thing, is a different mindset. And I love how you saying you forgave yourself first. A lot of people don't do that. They're able to forgive other people or blame other people, but actually everything comes back to self, doesn't it, in terms of forgiving oneself. So thank you for that. Just to complete this section of the interview then, is that the end of the series? Is that it being a trilogy, or is there another book or another chapter of your life that you want to put in a memoir?
Well, that is the end of the trilogy, because it is an autobiography of my life. I think when you reach the pinnacle of forgiveness in its true form, and I don't take that word lightly, in its true form, I think you have finalized things and you can move on. My personal writings, I think, is ended in that sense, but I continue to write in a joyous fashion now, with the singing, the songwriting, the plays, writing for other people. So I've done the healing part. I've released all of that. And I'm growing now, like I said, as a flower bed. And I'm able to put the essence of my whole self into writing for others, and the joy of writing for myself in another genre. It's happiness now that I write, which is great.
That's wonderful. Jannette, do you want to deliver your poem now?
I will. And it's on forgiveness. It's Walking on Forgiveness Road, this is called. And I think it was poignant to actually end on something like this. So here we go. Oh, I forgive you. Don't you go playing with that. Like some sanctimonious platitude, true forgiveness is a statement attitude, one that comes from gratitude and acceptance of oneself. Forgiveness isn't selfless, it's selfish. It's ownership. It's all what your emotions have accomplished in the realization of wasted, unanswered accusation. Whether it's you or them or even a situation, to forgive the altercation, the wrongdoing, the purposeful evil, the awards to you will always outdo the hurt, the pain, the daily drain, the weight, the hate, the not knowing, the lack of you growing and showing who you truly are. What you choose not to forgive affects you more as it festers in your core. Living a life so sore is no life at all. So if you choose to say, I forgive you, Don't play with it. Respect the power of it, and the power in you will return whole and true.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm not done with you yet, though. You said that it's nice to end with the poem, but I'm not finished yet, because I like the way that you just closed the trilogy. That's the
Yes.
end of that. And from now on, it's about celebrating the rest of your life. And you have done that by being part of a number of anthologies.
Yes.
And I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to name them all. I'll leave that to you. But tell me, how many anthologies have you been a part of, and what are the titles of those books?
6 anthologies I've been a part of. I have been a part of one called Life in a Lockdown, Behind Closed Doors, 2020, head author D. Bailey. That's one. I've been an author in When Grace Found Me, which is head author Kim Langley, an American author. So that's another one. Resilient Voices, which the funds was raised for the NHS at the deep part of the pandemic, was all of our things. And that was head by Brenda Dempsey, a Scottish woman. That's 3. There's The Triumph of Motherhood with our very own Marcia M. Spence. And that speaks for itself, as mothers are ups and downs, hills and gullies, our triumphs and everything else within that book. Survival Queens is another one. That was an essence of part of my book, with very detailed explanation of the abuse that occurred. So that was a very deep chapter. The book itself, the title speaks for itself, really, doesn't it? And that's really to help people with workshops, etc., and counselling. And the essence of all of our story that's gone in there are very deep, and it's just to help people be able to say anything they need to say in a safe place. So, and that headline was from Andrea Maynard Braid. And the other one was by Sharon Brown, which was Embracing Our Superpowers. That's Sharon Brown of Motivate Magazine and Revival Sanctuary. So that's number 6. Motivate Magazine. I was also the cover girl of August 2020, when it was Jamaica's independence at that time. So I was celebrating that, and I was the cover girl of that magazine at that time. So that was wonderful to me, a cover girl.
So
my goodness.
Why not? Why not? You're beautiful. And it's about time we have women like you on the front page of magazines. It's overdue. So congratulations on that. But Jannette, if people want to get hold of you, maybe they have an elderly loved one locally to you in Birmingham, or they want to get hold of your books, or they want to have a conversation with you. How can people get hold of you?
The easiest thing really to do is email, because with an email you can put whatever you need into. I don't like people putting too much on social media, because some things are very personal and private. The two genres that I'm in really can be quite personal and private and need to be safeguarded. So I think the best thing to do is email me. The care nursing side of my email is JanCanCare, number 1, @gmail.com, or lowercase, JanCanCare1 @gmail.com. And the writing side of me is Yearsis B, pen to page @outlook.com. So I have those 2. And my books can be found on Amazon. You only have to type into the search engine books by Jannette Barrett, and all of those books, even the anthologies, will come up within that space as well. I don't do complicated.
Jannette, thank you so much for joining us on the Author to Author podcast. I'm sure this book will make a fantastic competition prize for one of our lucky listeners. I just want to wish you all the best. Looking forward to seeing what you do next.
Oh, thank you, Pamela. And you, looking forward to what you do next. I'm sure
many thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Pamela Haynes. Thank you.
And thank you.
And thank you, listeners. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to the podcast as much as I enjoyed interviewing Jannette. It is competition time now. Jannette is a prolific writer, but how many books, including her anthologies, has she written? Do you know the answer? Then why not DM me on Instagram at Loving the Author with the correct answer. The competition closes on Friday at 5 p.m. So good luck, have a safe week ahead, and bye for now.